Hello, guys. Welcome back to the second part of the history of House Stark of Winterfell. If you haven't watched the first part, the link will be in the description below. Without any further thoughts, let's start. After the death of Lord Eddard Stark, he was succeeded by Lord Eddard Stark, who attended the Great Council of 101 AC to determine the new heir of the elderly King Jaehaerys. The final vote came to a choice between Viserys Targaryen, son of Jaehaerys' second son, Prince Baelon, and Laenor Velaryon, grandson of Jaehaerys through Rhaenys, daughter of his first son, Prince Aemon. Viserys was the candidate Jaehaerys himself preferred, and he won the final vote by a landslide, though the Starks were among the minority of lords who had supported Laenor, and one of only two great houses, the other being the Baratheons. Yandel that Eddard voted against Jaehaerys' preferred successor, because the Starks were still bitter about the king forcing them to donate the new gift to the Night's Watch, leading to its mismanagement. That action pushed the Starks closer to the Velaryon faction at King Viserys' first Targaryen's court, and through them they ultimately sided with Rhaenyra Targaryen during the Dance of the Dragons. At some point after 101 AC, Eddard was succeeded by Benjen Stark, and later Benjen was succeeded by his son Rickon. Rickon died in 121 AC and was succeeded as the nominal Lord of Winterfell by his only surviving son, the 13-year-old Cregan Stark. Rickon's brother, Bernard, served as regent during Cregan's minority. When Cregan came of age in 126 AC, however, Bernard was slow to surrender his power. Relations grew strained between Bernard and Cregan as the young Lord of Winterfell chafed under the limits imposed on him by his uncle. Ultimately, Cregan rose up against his uncle, imprisoned Bernard and his sons, and took rule of the North into his own hands. In 129 AC, as the Dance of the Dragons began, Prince Cherys Velaryon recruited Lord Cregan's aid for his mother, Queen Rhaenyra Targaryen, known as the Pact of Ice and Fire, even though the North was considered to be too remote to be of much influence in the war. Cregan initially sent the Winter Wolves under Roderick Dustin, Lord of Barrowton, and knights from White Harbor led by Sir Medric and Sir Torrin Manderly. After the gathering of one last harvest before winter, Cregan led a great army of childless, homeless, unwed or old men and younger sons to King's Landing. He arrived after King Aegon II Targaryen had been poisoned, however, and though he had hoped to punish those lords who had supported the late king, Corlys Velaryon, Lord of the Tides, had already sent out ravens suing for peace. While the court awaited replies, Cregan held sway and arrested all those involved in Aegon II's death, as he objected to the murder of a king. The as-yet uncrowned Aegon III Targaryen was cowed into naming Cregan as Hand of the King, though Cregan served only a day in that office, a time known as the Hour of the Wolf. Lord Stark held trials for 21 out of 22 of his prisoners, with Corlys the only one spared a trial. Aegon III pardoned Lord Velaryon and restored his titles to him, which Cregan allowed when Alysanne Blackwood offered her own hand in marriage. Cregan accepted the offer and got back to Winterfell, where they got married under the Godswood of Winterfell. Cregan struggled to hold the North together against several threats during the regency of Aegon III. A devastating winter had already begun late in the war, which ultimately lasted 6 years, and in 132 AC, the North was one of the first regions in Westeros struck by the winter fever, which continued through 133 AC. With the North weakened by winter, famine, and plague, a large wildling warband led by Silas the Grim seized on the opportunity to force their way south of the Wall. His force of 3,000 raiders overwhelmed the Night's Watch at Queensgate and proceeded to plunder the lands to the south. Lord Cregan rallied what few remaining able-bodied men were left among his bannermen, then rode out to hunt down and destroy Silas's raiding bands. Cregan's eldest son and heir was Rickon, named after his own father. Rickon predeceased his father when he died in one of the final battles of the conquest of Dorne during the reign of King Daeron, the first Targaryen. The North lamented Rickon's death, for the subsequent reigns of Cregan's younger sons after him were troublesome. Now comes the question of Cregan's successors, who had 5 sons: Rickon, Jonel, Edric, Barthogen, and Brandon. Though Rickon predeceased his father, he was survived by his own 2 daughters, Sansa and Serena, and by the known laws of succession, they should have been ahead of Rickon's younger brothers in line of inheritance. Northern succession laws may be different. There has never been a ruling Queen of Winter or ruling Lady of Winterfell, for example. However, and primogeniture is not necessarily binding elsewhere in the Seven Kingdoms either. Cregan's second son, Jonel, succeeded Cregan upon his death, marrying his half-niece Sansa. Cregan's third son, Edric, married Rickon's other daughter, Serena. Jonel's marriage to Sansa was childless, but upon his death, rule passed not to Cregan's third son, Edric, but to his fourth son, Barthogen. While it is possible that Edric predeceased his older brother, Edric did have 2 sons and 2 daughters with Serena, and the daughters had children of their own. And all of these normally would have been ahead of Barthogen in the line of succession. The exact reasons and circumstances under which Barthogen became lord are yet be known. Barthogen himself later died childless when he was slain in the Skagosi rebellion during the reign of King Daeron II Targaryen, and he was succeeded by Cregan's 5th and final son, Brandon, from whom the later generations of House Stark descend. Convoluted succession challenges remained for decades, possibly through Serena and Edric's children, and between Brandon's own rival grandchildren. Brandon was succeeded by his eldest son, Rodowell, who died without issue, after which rule passed to his younger brother, Beron. The grandson of Cregan, Beron was mortally wounded, fighting off an incursion by Dagon Greyjoy's Ironborn, and as he lay dying in Winterfell, multiple Stark widows pushed their children's rival succession claims against the others. Ultimately, Beron was succeeded by his eldest son, Donner Stark, but when he died without issue, rule passed to second son, Willem Stark. In 226 AC, Raymond Redbeard, the king beyond the wall, led a large wildling invasion. Lord Willem and Harmond Umber, Lord of the Last Hearth, met the wildling host in battle on the shores of Long Lake. Although Willem was killed by Raymond, his younger brother, Artos, avenged him by slaying the king beyond the wall. Willem was succeeded upon his death by his son Edwale Stark, father of Rickard Stark and grandfather of Eddard Stark. Lord Rickard Stark, urged on by his maester Wallace, allegedly sought to further Southron alliances. He sent his second son, Eddard, to be fostered with Lord John Arryn at the Eyrie at the age of 8. There, Eddard befriended fellow ward Robert Baratheon. Rickard betrothed his heir, Brandon, to Catelyn Tully, the daughter of Hoster Tully, Lord of Riverrun, and his only daughter, Lyanna, to Robert, Lord of Storm's End. Rickard's 4 children attended the tourney at Harrenhal in 281 AC, where they met Howland Reed. After winning the jousting competition at the tourney, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen crowned Lyanna as his Queen of Love and Beauty, passing over his own wife, Princess Alia Martell. In 282 AC, Brandon Stark was at Riverrun when the date of his wedding to Catelyn Tully was announced. Petter Baelish, Lord Hoster's ward, had been in love with Catelyn for years and challenged Brandon to a duel for Catelyn's hand. Brandon won. After the duel, Brandon left Riverrun, promising his bride-to-be that he would return soon. On his way back to Riverrun, however, Brandon heard about Lyanna's abduction by Prince Rhaegar and rode for King's Landing, where he was arrested by Aerys II for threatening the life of the crown prince. Rickard, who had been on his way to Riverrun with the wedding party, was summoned to court to answer for Brandon's crime. Brandon and Rickard were executed by King Aerys. Rickard was burned alive, while Brandon strangled himself in his attempt to rescue his father. After the executions, King Aerys demanded the heads of Eddard Stark and Robert Baratheon from their former foster father, Jon Arryn. The Lord of the Eyrie refused, however, and raised his banners in revolt. This act is seen as the start of Robert's rebellion. Eddard made an arduous journey through the Mountains of the Moon and the Bight to call his banners in the north. The new lord then marched south and won an important victory during the Battle of the Bells, rescuing his friend Robert with the aid of Hoster Tully. Next, he went to Riverrun, where he honored his late brother Brandon's betrothal by marrying Catelyn as part of the alliance to bring House Tully into the rebel fold. One of the principal commanders in the war, Eddard took command of the rebel army after the Battle of the Trident, following the remnants of Rhaegar's army to King's Landing. Ned arrived at the capital after the sack of King's Landing by Lord Tywin Lannister. However, And Lord Stark found King Aerys dead and Sir Jaime Lannister sitting on the Iron Throne. He had a falling out with Robert when Robert accepted the aid of House Lannister and condoned the murders of Rhaegar's wife, young daughter, and infant son. Eddard rode south the next day to relieve the siege of Storm's End. After Storm's End, Eddard and 6 companions went to retrieve Lyanna at the building Rhaegar had named the Tower of Joy, finding it defended by 3 knights of the Kingsguard. Eddard and Howland Reed were the only survivors of the ensuing combat at the Tower of Joy. Eddard found Lyanna dying in a bed of blood, clutching rose petals, dead and black, in her palm. She forced him to make a promise to her, which have haunted Eddard since. Eddard and Robert were reconciled in their shared grief over Lyanna's death. Eddard returned from the war with his bastard son, Jon Snow, said to have been birthed by Wylla, and Ned was presented with his trueborn son, Robb, by Catelyn when she arrived from Riverrun. Ned buried Lyanna's body in the crypt of Winterfell beside her father and brother. Eddard's younger brother, Benjen, joined the Night's Watch within a few months of Eddard's return from the war. A skilled ranger, Benjen eventually became First Ranger. Lord Stark fought in Greyjoy's rebellion in 289 AC, and he took Balon Greyjoy's son Theon with him to Winterfell, a hostage to ensure the loyalty of the Lord of the Iron Islands. Eddard has ruled the North in Robert's name, keeping a distance from the intrigue-ridden politics of King's Landing. If you have reached this far, thanks for watching. Just remember to hit the like button for me to get noticed by the mighty algorithm, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button also for more Ice and Fire content. Till next time. Valar Morghulis, bye-bye.